Welcome everyone to Silver Screen Slam, where we praise those wonderful moving pictures we have all enjoyed over the past century. I'm your ever-impulsive host, Jake Brown, growing bored with the same routine every day, wishing for something fresh and new. So come join me each episode as we explore movies of the past and present and discuss what we'd love to remember, what we'd like to forget, and with what we'd have others, that is you, our loyal viewers, enlighten us about them. After each episode, we will ask you to voice your own opinion about upcoming movies we delve into via our social media outlets at the bottom of your screen. With that being said, I really think we should move on. During each episode, we'll discuss a movie that we feel warrants considerable praise for bringing many positive artistic elements to the screen. This may be a new release, a not-so-new release, or even one of the classics. In our previous episode, we explored last year's code-cracking Alan Turing biopic, The Imitation Game, directed by Morton Tilden and starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Keira Knightley, and my man Mark Strong. We expressed our love for much of the cast performance and the central code-cracking theme of the story, as well as an awesome musical score worthy of purchase. In this episode, we'll explore the 2004 semi-surreal dream date epic Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, directed by Michel Gondry. Not that you'll remember any of this come tomorrow morning, but let's first talk some extras. With each of our extras segments, we discuss any movie news we feel is, well, awesome and deserving enough to let the world know about. But preposition-ending sentences aside, that's not all we discuss. We love movies here, and we know that there's a lot that goes into making movies, and a lot of creative license placed in the final product. So, in today's extras segment, I feel it's important to bring to attention something about films that I hold very dear. And that is the more prominent utilization of practical, on-location special effects in a piece, as opposed to the computer-generated visual effects used throughout most of modern cinema today. When a director or a cinematographer chooses for the illusions they present to their audience to be physically there in front of the camera, it is so much more of an immersing experience than when an artist chooses to use CGI techniques instead. When lighting, focus, film type, camera work, and sleight of hand are the tools used to trick the eyes, it's so much more of a rewarding experience for me as the viewer, also having now being tasked with trying to figure out exactly how they did it. One example I usually bring up is with famed and favored director Peter Jackson and his Tolkien Middle-earth series of films. With Jackson's The Lord of the Rings in the early 2000s, he clearly took great pains in making author J.R.R. Tolkien's story come to life in the most realistic way possible. Most of this was accomplished with forced perspective, as well as small and big constructed models of structures and characters digitally spliced into large-scale backgrounds. Therefore, while far from the least CG-heavy movie to date, much of what we see is actually in front of the camera, with the proverbial wires removed after the fact. Now, when Jackson later decided to take on the Hobbit series of films, he wanted to do so in 3D. This may sound cool to some, but it meant now having to do away with the classic model splicing techniques and many other on-screen special effects, as the 3D cameras, in 48 frames per second, made for too much captured realism for the models to be able to accomplish. Therefore, Jackson chose to lay out most of his shots with CGI green screen backgrounds, structures, and characters. Now before you shout, "Hypocrite!" let me remind you of Jackson's hefty budget, and our not-so-hefty one. While Jackson's decision may not be a big deal to some, for me it caused the films to lose a huge amount of realism, and it completely reversed what I spoke about earlier. In Jackson's first trilogy, he only used his special effects to realistically bring to life a great story. But in his second trilogy, it seemed that he instead only used a story to show off the vast amount of digital visual effects he could throw into each scene. Understand that I still do love Peter Jackson, and I, for the most part, enjoy a lot of the three Hobbit films. But I can't help but lose some of that sense of awe I once had for Middle-earth, now that it feels sort of one-dimensional. It should be noted that we would have used Star Wars as an example of this, but our show doesn't allow for that kind of time. Nor would you, the viewer, be able to understand me clearly with the muted audio and censor bar over my mouth. However, in order to leave this segment on a happier note, we will suggest a film that went above and beyond in creatively utilizing only practical and in-camera effects to achieve its desired result, with no CGI techniques whatsoever. And that is Francis Ford Coppola's 1992 adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Let's take a quick look at some of what we feel makes this movie so special.
Welcome to my home. Enter freely of your own will and leave some of the happiness you bring.
Count Dracula?
I am Dracula. And I bid you welcome, Mr. Harcourt, to my house.
Now, you will have to avoid taking Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder too seriously, but in the end, this is the movie you're looking for. Now, there's a related point we're getting to with the previous extra segment, something I absolutely love about this episode's movie. And that leads us into today's featured flick, 2004's alternative love story, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. The film was director Michel Gondry's second full-length collaboration with writer Charlie Kaufman, who had also previously written such works of art as 2002's Adaptation and 1999's Being John Malkovich. Take a quick look at Eternal Sunshine.
Resolved. I'm willing to be the one to resolve it. So I call her, and she's changed her number. So I walked over to Antic Attic, to get her something. I thought, I'd go over to work, give her an early Valentine, and you won't believe it. She's there with this guy, this really young guy, and she looks at me like she doesn't even know who I am.
Excuse me? Can I help you find something, sir? Oh, good.
Why would she do that to me?
All right, Joel, look, man, seriously,
Rob,
here's the deal.
don't do that. Rob, what are you doing?
Okay. What is it?
I don't know, it's some place that does a thing.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind stars Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, Mark Ruffalo, Elijah Wood, Tom Wilkinson. I could go on forever, as there are many great names in this movie. The story is about a man named Joel Barish, played by Carrey, who decides to take part in a medical procedure to delete his now ex-girlfriend Clementine, played by Winslet, from his memories after sadly discovering that she has already abruptly done the same to him. Once the technicians from Lacuna Inc. are performing the procedure on Joel later in the night while he is asleep, the viewer is sucked into the past memories of his relationship with Clementine and taken on a bizarre visual ride through the many different experiences, good and bad, they went through together, causing Joel to wonder during sleep, was this such a good idea? The twists and turns taken in this film and the ultimate climax resulting from them will leave you wanting to start it all right back over from the beginning. After all, that's exactly what happened to me. This is the only movie I have ever seen that had me immediately turn around and kick it back on for a second viewing out of pure excitement over what I had just watched. Which brings us to the good. While Eternal Sunshine may take inspiration from other sources, it really is a unique and original love story. The hopeless Joel is in a constant state of having his head barely above the water, trying to grab hold of what little he can of each fading memory. Outside of Joel's head, Lacuna technicians Stan and Patrick, as well as a couple of other Lacuna employees, each have a story of their own that brings the movie to a head in its final emotional moments. The film also does one of the most brilliant jobs I've ever seen of stepping out of chronological order to set the viewer up for an ending one certainly might not expect. The way Gondry has chosen to begin this movie by implicitly asking the viewer to question when these events are taking place, only to drop them right into a completely different set of events, may seem confusing at first. But not to worry, as he brings it all around in the end, leaving you wide-eyed and understanding. As for the acting, Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet make you feel they were born for these roles. Carrey takes a break from his traditional loony style to bring to the screen a character who is clearly lost and in desperate need of his other half. Best to just forget her, right? But how could you forget Winslet? The way she portrays a character with such a mercurial mindset, Troubled, but with such lovable zeal and spontaneity. She makes Clementine the perfect polar opposite of Joel. And Charlie Kaufman's writing does a wonderful job of making the viewer question whether or not that's actually a good thing. But it's not just them. This was the first film in which I had ever seen Mark Ruffalo, and he blew me away. Elijah Wood shook away my assumptions about the types of characters he plays by giving me a very discomforting feeling about him with his sleazeball, yet slightly endearing mentality of Lacuna technician Stan. And Tom Wilkinson fits the wise, humble role perfectly as the creator of the medical procedure himself, Dr. Mierzwiak. But what about the music? The music! I should probably clarify at this point in our show that music is very important to me when watching a film. Music can twist and tug on a person's emotions like very few other aspects of a movie can. And this score does just that. With composer John Bryan, as well as Beck and other great musicians, the music of Eternal Sunshine does something I can honestly say I've never felt another movie do. It envelops you in this burrito blanket of warmth and comfort, while simultaneously showing you a cold, lonely, and at times, frightening landscape. This juxtaposition of visual and auditory mediums is yet another characteristic of this film that sets it apart from so many others. Which now finally leads us to the cinematography. We've talked a lot about what makes this movie so special to us, but what about its flaws? What about its flaws? I did feel at times like Kate Winslet may have been forcing the short-tempered personality of her character a little too strongly. So there's that. Nothing else really comes to mind, though, unless there's something hiding under the surface I haven't caught. Come to think of it, just trying to find the bad in it makes me want to see this film again. So there you have it. Eternal Sunshine really does stick with you as a quality movie, with few, if any, faults. So with that, let's hear what the public has to say. If you remember liking Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or if you feel it's a film you'd love to find and watch for yourself, we highly recommend also catching the 2000 thriller mystery Memento, directed by notable writer-director Christopher Nolan and starring Guy Pearce, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Joe Pantoliano. Memento forces you into the mind of a man who has not only lost the person he loves, but who has also suffered from permanent short-term memory loss in the process of trying to save her. Follow Leonard Shelby as he attempts to piece together the puzzle of information on the person who murdered his wife by tattooing his entire body with clues about the mystery man and slowly discovering more about himself in the process. Leonard finds himself perpetually snapping photos of every detail in his daily life so as not to lose sight of who he is and what he wants. While not the exact same movie as Eternal Sunshine, Memento does present love as a powerful force and tests whether or not such a force can transcend the abilities of the manipulated mind. The film is a sci-fi bullet shot through the choppy events of someone who is desperately trying to avenge the injustice done to his partner and himself. The cinematography style isn't quite the same as what we discussed earlier in Eternal Sunshine, but the story, acting, and music are all superb and unforgettable. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Silver Screen Slam. Join us next episode when we'll be checking out the 2010 Twisted Graffiti art documentary, Exit Through the Gift Shop, directed by renowned graffiti artist Banksy, and also starring Banksy and Terry Gowetta, aka Mr. Brainwash. If you have anything you'd like to voice about next episode's film, or if you enjoy the show in general, feel free to drop us a line on our social media outlets at the bottom of your screen. After all, we don't want you to forget about us. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jake Brown, asking you to meet me in Montauk and to get outside more and watch some movies. Thank you. Thank you. Whew. Plenty of space over here. Am I off camera completely? I'm still in the shot? Wow. This camera can still see me on the virtual set and everything? How about, can it see me now? Where's on? On? Hi. With each of our extras, I'm not going to do that. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever done. We'll do it maybe for another shot. That's so ridiculous. All right, I can't please. Okay, I'm ready.